In the year 2026, the world is poised for an unprecedented transformation, one that will reverberate across every continent and affect every individual. The prophecies of Nostradamus, written in the solar 8th century, foretell an era of significant change in global politics, with alliances being forged and the balance of power shifting dramatically. He predicted that the world would witness a fundamental realignment, with powerful new forces emerging, which would challenge the dominance of traditional superpowers. In his cryptic writings, Nostradamus referred to three major forces as the bear, the dragon, and the eagle, each representing distinct global powers. These metaphors were used to describe Russia, China, and the United States, respectively, and Nostradamus's vision of their rise, cooperation, and conflict points to a shifting world order by 2026. The bear from the north, symbolizing Russia, has historically been a formidable force in Europe and Asia, one that has had significant geopolitical influence. The dragon from the east, representing China, has been a rising power for several decades, steadily increasing its influence on the global stage through economic expansion and political maneuvering. Meanwhile, the eagle from the west, representing the United States, has been the dominant global superpower since the end of World War II. But Nostradamus predicted that by 2026, this dominance would begin to wane, as new alliances would rise to challenge the established power structures. Nostradamus's first prophecy focuses on the emergence of a powerful alliance between Russia and China, which has been developing for years. Since as early as 2022, these two countries began forming what could be described as an unlimited partnership, with both nations engaging in joint military exercises, energy deals, and even discussions on developing a digital currency that could bypass the US dollar. This growing partnership was highlighted by the declaration of their alliance, which essentially signaled the beginning of a new geopolitical shift. It's no longer just a matter of occasional cooperation. The bond between Russia and China has evolved into a strategic partnership that challenges the global influence of the United States. Nostradamus predicted that this alliance would continue to grow, drawing in other nations into the fold. Countries such as Iran and North Korea have already found themselves aligning with Russia and China, creating a more unified and powerful bloc. Even Saudi Arabia, a longtime ally of the United States, has begun to reorient itself, engaging in energy deals with China and diversifying its economic partnerships away from the US dollar. The establishment of this new geopolitical structure is undeniable, and Nostradamus foresaw that it would continue to shift the global balance of power. As this alliance expands, the influence of the United States will begin to diminish. Nostradamus predicted that the United States, which has long been a global leader, would lose half of its power. This loss would not occur in an abrupt, catastrophic fashion, but rather in a gradual and painful erosion of influence. Political divisions within the US are already becoming more pronounced, with the country experiencing internal strife and a fractured society. These divisions, coupled with a growing national debt that now exceeds $36 trillion, signal a vulnerability in the once dominant American system. As the US becomes increasingly polarized and focused inward, its ability to project power and influence on the global stage will be diminished. Nostradamus did not predict the complete collapse of the United States, but rather a scenario in which the country loses its preeminent position on the world stage. This loss will not be a sudden collapse but a steady decline, where the US finds itself sidelined as other nations, particularly Russia and China, assume greater control. This shift in power dynamics is not merely a product of external threats, it is the result of internal instability, which will increasingly limit the US's ability to maintain its leadership in global affairs. While the US remains a significant player, its once unquestioned dominance will gradually fade, making room for new powers to rise. By 2026, Nostradamus foresaw that the emerging alliance of Russia, China, and their partners would become more public and assertive. The alignment of these nations would challenge the traditional Western-led order, and countries around the world would be forced to choose a side. It would not be a matter of military conflict or outright war, but rather a political and economic realignment that would see nations aligning with either the West or the East, with long-standing alliances coming into question. This new world order will be defined by strategic partnerships, trade agreements, and shifting allegiances, where nations no longer automatically fall under the influence of the United States. Nostradamus's prediction paints a vision of a divided world, one where global power is no longer centered in the West, but instead shared between the rising powers of Russia and China. In this scenario, countries that have long depended on the United States for protection, trade, and economic stability will have to make difficult choices about their alliances. Some will align themselves with the East, joining forces with Russia and China, while others may seek to remain neutral or turn to new alliances. The geopolitical landscape will be redefined, and the traditional power structures of the beset century will be upended. In this new world order, the United States will no longer be able to dictate the terms of global engagement as it once did. The loss of half its power will be marked by a decline in influence, both politically and economically. This shift will not necessarily lead to the collapse of the US, but it will usher in a new era where the balance of power is more evenly distributed. The influence of Russia and China will continue to grow, and the world will have to adapt to a more multipolar system in which no single nation dominates. What makes this prophecy so powerful is the way it resonates with current trends and events. The partnership between Russia and China, which began as a political and economic alliance, is now shaping global geopolitics. The rise of new powers and the shifting balance of power are not just theoretical concepts. They are happening in real time. Nostradamus's foresight, which was written over 400 years ago, has proven to be remarkably prescient. As the world enters 2026, the once unchallenged dominance of the United States is increasingly being questioned, and new alliances are taking shape that will redefine the future. This changing geopolitical landscape is not just about the rise of new powers. It's about the redistribution of power across the globe. Countries that have long been subjugated to the influence of the West are now finding new opportunities for collaboration and influence. The global stage is becoming more diverse, with new players emerging from all corners of the world, challenging the old hierarchies and reshaping international relations. As 2026 approaches, Nostradamus's prophecy warns us that the world will no longer be as it once was. The old order is crumbling, and new alliances are taking shape. While the United States may not collapse, its power will be reduced, and the global stage will be defined by new forces. The question remains, how will nations respond to this shift? Will they adapt and find new ways to navigate the changing world, or will they cling to the past, struggling to maintain their influence in a rapidly changing world? Only time will tell, but one thing is certain: the geopolitical transformation predicted by Nostradamus is well underway, and by 2026, the world will be a very different place.